on Kwibuka 26, and we're looking, our topic for tonight is a journey of resilience and hope for survivors, youth survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. And joining us on our show tonight via Skype, like we've done in the last couple of weeks, we have our guests, and I'll start with Fidel Nsengiyaremye, who is the Executive Director of JAG. Fidel, great to have you on the show.
Yes, please. Good evening.
Good evening. We also have with us Samantha Teta. Samantha is a digital curator, and many of you might know some of the hashtags that she curated on social media. This is hashtag Dear Survivor and hashtag Turibuka. So Samantha Teta, great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. We are also joined by Claver Irakoze. Claver is here in his capacity as the author of a book that was launched in April 2019 called That Child Is Me. Claver, great to have you on the square.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So tonight we're really here to listen to genocide youth survivors, look at their achievements, look at their journeys, hear their personal stories. And also look at how we can use the role of youth in educating future generations on the memorialization of the genocide against the Tutsi to ensure that it never happens again. My name is Dana PC, host of The Square. I'm joined by The Square resident panelists, Brenna Namata. Great to have you on The Square.
Thank you, Dana.
Charlie Hammer, great to have you on The Square.
Same here, Dana. How are you?
Good. Yes. Like we always do before we kick off, we're going to have a midweek highlights. How has your week been, Brenna, so far? Is there anything you'd like to share?
I was just thinking about it, whether it's worth mentioning or not. Okay. The world woke up to the shock of Trump as not surprising, but I think it kind of reminds us the reality on the ground, that whoever has the money calls the shots.
But in this case, you mean the reality of Trump pulling funds to WHO?
Yeah, because the world can still give a lot of space. Trump still gets a lot of media attention because he has the money. His country funds so many initiatives around the world. So, that's a tool for influence. I don't think anybody who has followed Trump, if it was another head of state, they wouldn't survive the wrath that would come from, such carelessness and comments. But he gets away with so much. And now, it doesn't matter what we say, whether we disagree with him in terms of the decision. If you have the money, put it on the table, and you don't have to talk about Trump anymore. Do we have the money? I mean, as Africans, we're behind who? We're behind... we're trying to say, stop harassing him. But at the end of the day, what matters is the money.
Money talks.
Yeah, so Africa has to be able to find that money, at least, to support him also. Yeah.
And it's to support Dr. Tedros. And it's a pity that all this has been politicized around the pandemic.
It's
the
not surprising,
around
though.
It has been politicized.
It's not surprising, though, because everything is political. I have come to learn. Everything is political. Whether you like it or not, it's always going to be political.
Yeah.
And more so now, the world will always be pulled into the fights between China and the US, So today it's who. The next time you can expect another big international organization. And it always, it will always be the fight between the US and China. And unfortunately, China is yet to come in as aggressive as as the US. Yeah, they are still diplomatic in so many ways. Yeah.
Charles, any midweek highlights?
Yes, I was going to talk about my Easter experience. I did make a pledge to you guys that throughout this lockdown, I would be sharing with you guys my personal experience during the lockdown. So on Easter Sunday, we wake up in the morning, have our family workout as usual. And then we go and fully prepare to go for our Easter program.
In your garden?
We dress up very well with my whole family in our Easter best clothes. Go for church service in the sitting room. Have a sumptuous meal somewhere within our humble establishment. And I actually, when I rewound my clock, I don't remember having such a great Easter.
Nice.
like that one.
Nice.
Yeah, but just Bana said something that tickled my mind around everything being political. Today we're expecting to hear from the East African Heads of State Summit that was going to be on video conferencing, and Sudan pulled out in the last minute. Now, Sudan pulls out, and then you look at it, it's not the first time it's happening that Sudan is pulling out, I think, in the space of about a year or so. And you look at it, you say, could it be the fact that... South Sudan, yes. Thank you for that correction, Bana. South Sudan asks that the summit is postponed because they're not ready. Could it be the fact that His Excellency Riek Machar has just come into the fold as a vice president and COVID matters fall under his docket, and his boss, President Kiir, is not too comfortable with Riek Machar being in the limelight? Probably not. But then, again, around East Africa and COVID, Tanzania insists on not locking down. They say life should go on as normal. They have the highest number of deaths in the region. They had 29 cases today. You ask yourself, what are we up to as East Africa?
I wouldn't think it would be as... It may even sometimes be as small as an internet connection, because sometimes you take it for granted that all countries have the infrastructure. Sometimes they don't. So, and yet we know with this conferencing, you need good fiber, you need, So
I think for me, the thing that really is bothering me about this whole global pandemic and looking at Africa as a continent and just countries in Africa is that this should really be a wake-up call in terms of how we engage more in R&D, in research and development. It's just disheartening to see that we're still on handouts, from countries that are putting this at the forefront in terms of research and development, countries that have been thinking about this sort of scenario for years. And I just feel like, really, this should really be a wake-up call. We account for globally less than 2% of research in the world, and our landmass is huge, this has to stop. It really irks me that even during COVID-19, we're still on the handout, we're still looking for directions, and our experience of this pandemic is different, So what does that tell us? So I think maybe that's something we can discuss next week. But yeah, let's stick to the matter at hand. We are here to hear from our panelists today, most of whom are young people, young children during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, but have gone on to really make an impact in their lives and also for those, or for others as well. So I'll start, Fidel, with you. And, we know that you are the executive secretary of Jarije, which is a non-profit, for those who may not know, a non-profit, non-governmental organization, genocide survivor graduates from universities who operate under the umbrella Ibuka. And Jarija was founded in 2003. So for 17 years, this institution has been working, founded by Rwandan youth to restore families and also to give hope to young genocide survivors. And its sister organization is RJ, which are students who are still in school, who are not graduates. And Fidel, if you can just tell us if you can start by telling us your personal story and how you came to join Jarije and how, the impact it's made on you as an individual as well as other young people in Rwanda.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you very much for this opportunity for me to be able to be your listener articles about my short testimony and the Aisha. Overall, let me tell you, expect too much. Just started when I was 12. In that period, experienced so much things, but of course, its consequences have
we'll get back to you briefly because your sound keeps on breaking up a bit. So let's just fix your sound very quickly, but we'll get back to you briefly. But hold that thought with you. We'll get back to you. Yeah, we'll get back to you briefly. So the next conversation I'd like us to go to is to Claver. Claver Irakoze, as I said earlier on, is the author of That Child Is Me. You know, we've seen a significant spike, Berna and Charles, I'm sure you'll agree, over the last couple of years of Rwandans who have been publishing their memoirs regarding their experiences as survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. And it's really been very interesting, very inspiring to listen to their stories. And Claver released That Child Is Me in April 2019, last year. And Claver, if you can just tell us your story, what inspired you to write this book, and what is the purpose of this book?
Thank you, Diana. As you said, the book was last year in April. And maybe to start it off, I must say that probably surviving the was a miracle, and so survivors. So from the little boy I was back to become a parent, my survival journey became inevitable and of telling what happened and how it happened. For those who were not there, so for generations to come. So writing that chapter came from inspired by that having with my kid, who surprisingly at the very young had started asking me about my parents, their grandparents, questions about the gender, also questions about that. So at first, it was very touching. I was very touched by it. But it also, this was a subject I will never escape. It is part of who we are, also effectively as a nation. Another motivation came other parents who having similar experiences. So that's how really the book came up. I wanted to be closer to my children, and so I decided to write my story in a way that would help them learn something about us, something about my family, but also my life after my parents got killed. These were questions, and I know that other parents are also similar experiences. So that's how I started. And right from the title, I made it appealing to everyone because I know that my can also be a story of many others. So calling it was so intentional. I could have said that boy, but I wanted to include. So it's a small book made of various illustrations and some text. But it's quite big because they go on exploring those illustrations which carry more than. And it is a book for young kids. It is a book for young kids from 3 to 13 years old. But it is also a book for parents. And I hope the way it is written will probably inspire other parents to start sharing their stories in a less traumatic manner.
Thank you very
much. I would say that is the whole story of the book.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Claver. So you wrote the book basically based on your experience, and it's to help parents share their stories or teach their children about the genocide without traumatizing them, if you got that correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay, and is the book available in stores in Rwanda? How does someone access your book?
So the book is available, first of all, store in Kigali, Charisma, and the Kigali, but it can also be ordered through Imagine.
They can also be ordered online through Imagine Me.
Imagine Rwanda.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank you very much. Charles, I know you have children, and as a parent, I think the book that Claver, published, That Child Is Me, is very important. Is this a conversation you've had with kids? Because I know a lot of parents, when it comes to teaching, young children about the horrors of this country's past, it's not easy. It's not easy to do it, and I think this book from Claver, who is a genocide survivor, it's a fantastic initiative.
Well, for sure, it's a book I'm definitely going to look for. Before we came for this show, I didn't know about it, and thanks, Claver, I think I'm going to definitely look for that book. But he raises something extremely important in terms of, one, our curriculum and how we live with our children at home, and how often we actually get to tell them about Rwanda and our Rwandan past. So it's prior to the lockdown, and this is something that I think we talked about 3 weeks ago, and the challenges of parenting during the lockdown. And then fast forward, we come into genocide commemoration, and we start asking ourselves very, very pertinent questions. What is the role of the parent in shaping the child at home? Sometimes we think, and I believe I stand to be corrected, in 2017 or 16 thereabouts, when genocide against the Tutsi and the related studies became compulsory as part of the Rwandan curriculum. I think it wasn't too long ago, and well, that was extremely helpful. But fast forward, when you come into and I believe when Samantha comes in to give in her remarks, it will come in handy when it comes to lessons or ways of communicating that go with the current times. How then do you blend that in, yet you're probably a parent of those times, So I think that's usually where the dilemma is, and I'm looking forward to that book, yes.
Brenna, is there something you'd like to add to what Claver has shared with us?
No, I was just trying to figure out the publishing of the book. And I'm interested in hearing his story around publishing. You and I know that getting work published is not easy. So if you could help us and tell us how easy or difficult it was to get his story published, the funding for the book. And I think the reason Charlie has not heard about it is probably because there's not a lot of marketing around, around the book, which is a big problem, because on one hand you push people to tell stories, but then if these stories do not go as far as they can, then you have a problem, because then you leave it to people who will simply look out for the books, looking out for certain things, not necessarily for the case of understanding, and so I think that's a general challenge. But I'm interested in hearing his story.
Claver, if we can go back to you, Claver, and you tell us, as Brenna said, and also on behalf of our viewers, what was your experience like in getting this book published? What were some of your challenges in terms of marketing, as well as in terms of cost? And is it easy for Rwandans who want to tell such stories to get them across? I know we have some local publishing houses that have sprung up over the last couple of years. There's Who's the Press, there's Imagine Me Rwanda. So if you can share with us your experience regarding publishing.
Thank you so much. The very big challenge I had was to very talented graphic designers to work on illustrations. Most of them are young people. They were not there during the genocide, so it was quite complicated for them to understand what they wanted visually to come out. That was the first challenge, and I must really send my regards to Imagine We team who worked with me, and Dolphe Banza who also helped me for this work, and Mika who worked on all illustrations in the book. It was hard for them to construct these realities of 1994 for kids and making sure that we are not bringing out something that would end up traumatizing kids. So that was the very first challenge. And many of our sessions could actually turn into, I would say, just informal conversation for them to understand what I wanted to bring out. The second big challenge was on terminologies. You know, this book is for kids from 3 to 13 years old. And I wanted to meet them in their comfort zones. When we talk about our parents, we tell them that they're in heaven because heaven is the concept they can understand. I think it was too early to bring terminologies like perpetrators and so on. Again, we tried to keep the reality, the story as it is, but meeting them in their spheres of comprehension, and that also took really much time. Another challenge was, of course, on the cost that was involved in this work. I financed everything, and I worked with Imagine We on the publishing parts. And I must say that I wish the book was a little bit cheaper than it is today. But again, that is the consequence of having everything done here, where you don't have capacity, for instance, to print, let's say, 1 million copies and get one copy really down to something like 2,000-3,000. So that was in a nutshell, challenges I had. And then on the point about publicity, we tried, and we had put together a good plan for this year, but unfortunately, because of the COVID outbreak, we couldn't implement it. Otherwise, we wanted to meet kids in their schools. We also wanted to do an official launch of the book and do different activities that could bring more kids and parents together and do some activities about the book, but also some reflective work on it.
Just a last question while we're still on this topic. Do you have plans to have it translated into Kinyarwanda?
Yes, translation in Kinyarwanda is ongoing, and translation in French is also ongoing. So if all goes well, the book will be in 3 languages by summer this year.
Fantastic. And before we get back to Fidel, where we are technically trying to fix that issue of sound, I want us to go to Samantha. Samantha, all the way in Canada, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. You're online. So Samantha, thanks once again for joining us. I know you're also on lockdown. I assume you're not in school at the moment, or you're studying online?
We've been studying online, but then school just ended for me.
Okay. So, Sam, you have been, while we're talking about, as Charles mentioned earlier, new ways in the future whereby we'll use digital online platforms to commemorate the genocide against the Tutsi. And what we've seen in this year's commemoration period, there was a huge spike in the platforms online that were being used, of course, which were largely due to the COVID-19 lockdown. And, you curated with your friends the hashtag Dear Survivor, as well as the hashtag Turibuka. And if you can just tell us what inspired you to do this and what has been the impact so far. Personally, I was following these online conversations that were very touching, very inspiring. And I thought it was a fantastic way for people to convene online and preserve this memory of the loss of loved ones. So what inspired you to do it, and what has been the impact so far?
So like most people my age, I am an avid social media user. And so I have noticed how during Kwibuka, we have so many genocide deniers that pop out. They come out of the woodworks and they, like spread so much misinformation. And we're always responding to it, always fighting the ideologies and division and revision and denial. And I thought that this year is not going to be different. Deniers are going to come on the internet. And then what that does is that it puts us in the defensive. We're always like saying that's not true, that's not history, trying to prove the point. We're always on the defensive. And then the fact that we're in lockdown and survivors are not able to go to see loved ones, to take flowers to the graves or to water bodies or to convene and commemorate together meant that there would be so much more loneliness and so much more, trauma reoccurring, and not being able to be surrounded with people. So with these two things together, it occurred to me that we could use social media to tell our own story. And so I reached out to my friends and I told them, what if we started a hashtag Dear Survivor, to curate our cyberspace, to make it safe for us to have these conversations. And so what hashtag Dear Survivor is basically telling survivors that we are grateful that they are here, that they survived. We want to hear and we're grateful for the stories they've told us about their ordeals. We believe them. And this is how we demonstrate that we care by just like creating a safe space. And creating a safe space means that we're telling survivors, if you tell us something in this social media space, we're going to receive it with care. We're going to amplify the testimonies, and we're going to drown out all these other sounds and noises and information that would have been detrimental. And so that's what, and then we, of course, when you put a hashtag out on the internet, it takes on a life of its own. And so people are sharing testimonies and stories and family and so much was going on in history. And then we decided to create a calendar of events like you would in a normal Kwibuka event where we were convened. So we designed it to follow the Remember, Renew, and Unite format. And so we were having daily discussions on intergenerational trauma, on mental health, on genocide literature. So every day was divided into an event that was curated by several members of my team. And so we wanted to really sustain these conversations and not get caught up in just the politics or or maybe not even be engaged. We wanted to make sure that these conversations were still at the forefront and were comforting survivors. And then the second hashtag that we did was hashtag Turibuka. This was very important to us because we wanted people to say their names of who we've lost, because it's important for memorial that we remember who they were, not just what was done to them, not just the horrors in the end. We want to know were they artists, were teachers, were they mothers, were they fathers? Well, it became a very bittersweet exchange because we're asking people to remember really these people in their full dignity. So impact-wise, just on Twitter, we got this from Twitter Analytics. Upwards of 100 people used the hashtags to share testimonies, stories, messages. And then we have what we call social media reach, which means just how many people saw on their feed, they saw these tweets. There were 100,000 people that saw these posts. We had 4,000 people interacting with them actively, like through posts, likes, retweets, and shares. And then most of the interaction was happening in Rwanda, Canada, US, UK, India, and Germany. So this is what just the framework was over this last week. Yeah.
Teta, that's fantastic. And this just took place in 1 week. Do you have plans to spread this online campaign, hashtags over a longer period?
I had the idea on April 7th, and then on April 8th, we just hit the ground running. So I didn't really have time to think about any of these things. But now that we came at the end and we saw the kind of impact and the kind of conversations we created, we're like, this could become a genuine form of storytelling, where every time we have a stuff like liberation or any just historical thing happening, we get to convene once again and just collect information, because we have, again, to create these spaces, we have to protect them and we have to share true information. This is how we teach the next generation, you know, and this is how we get everyone interested by taking deliberate and intentional actions to do this, and you know, online. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I know Twitter personally, and I think she's a go-getter. And I think what you did is fantastic. Brenna, Charles, is there something you'd like to add?
I mean, hats off to Samantha. You know, when she was telling her story and how she went about it, I was just glued to the screen and looking at her and like, this is truly amazing. It goes on to really echo what we're discussing with Claver earlier on. But you know, we have to move with the times, and if you look at our children today and where we are moving towards, you know, if you hashtags will be something that, you know, every topic at home you're going to say hashtag what's on for lunch, you know, things like that. Yeah. So really, congratulations, Samantha is the best I can say, and please keep it up. Yeah.
Would you like to add something before we go to Fidel?
Yeah, I think it's amazing, and I think what Samantha shows us is that we shouldn't wait to get to a certain age. I mean, these are just young people that are doing things, because we have a tendency to think that you're still young and perhaps you can't do anything. But look at her. The other key point is amplifying these voices. I always feel that we always can do better in terms of amplifying voices of survivors especially, and it should be our responsibility to do that as much as we can, because the genocide deniers are not sleeping, so we shouldn't. Yeah. We shouldn't. So, and perhaps a tip to Samantha and the team, they need to really get the data before it becomes expensive. Their data that they manage to collect.
Accurate, yes.
Yeah, because 1 year down the road, it will be difficult to ask Twitter to give you this data. So if you can start taking the screenshots, get as much as you can right now, it will be much easier to compare maybe along the way and also learn. It will also be quite resourceful for researchers. The other thing that came out is meaningful engagement. Quite often we see that on social media, meaningful engagement is lacking. Her story speaks to what we need to see in terms of meaningful engagement. You know, when people go on social media, it's not just some random posts that mean nothing, you know. Yeah, but people actually taking the time to reflect and have some meaningful conversations. Yeah. So well done, Samantha, and congratulations.
Yeah, Sam, well done.
Yes. If I may, I just wanted to add something else, and I think for Samantha and Fidel and GRG as part of the bigger group, IRG, IWUKA, and everyone else who's under the umbrella organization. The genocide commemoration period is just a small percentage of the whole campaign. Genocide scholars will tell you that perpetrators will never go to bed because at most what they can do is ask for forgiveness. But a huge number of them and their descendants are most likely to feel aggrieved, or sometimes, actually quite often, we have seen the urge to actually want to do it again. Especially because if they believe that the reason for which they committed the act was a genuine reason in their stupid minds, the likelihood of them wanting to do it again is extremely high. In their lifetime, or if not, to convince their descendants to be able to commit such heinous crimes again. Now, that said, the only way to look at this as a war and not a battle is through social media. Because, I mean, that's where we are, that's where we're going, and there's no two ways about it. So again, just to emphasize, and especially for Samantha, and I'm glad that Fidel is on board again, that you know, Samantha should not coil and say I only had one day to do this and had such a huge impact. You know, the war is only just beginning as far as the impact she can create is concerned.
That's true. So Samantha, I hope you've taken Brenna's tip. I want us to just go to, to Fidel. Fidel, are you with us?
Yes.
Fantastic. So unfortunately, you were cut short when we began because of some technical issues, but we're back with you. And, you know, you started off by saying you don't really have much to say because you were 2 years old when the genocide took place. But you were about to share with us your experience, not only as Executive Director, Executive Secretary of JAEG, but if you can just tell us how this, this organization has impacted you growing up.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. As I told you, when genocide started, I was too young. I was just 3 years old. I have not experienced it too much, but its consequences have a great impact on my life because I lost my parents during the genocide and my siblings, all of them. So I left it alone. You can imagine children of 3 years being left alone by this genocide. It was not easy for me, but I have managed to survive. Going back to how I have joined JAEG and the IRG, of course, I don't know where to start because I will only say that I am very thankful to the initiators of this organization because it has built me the capacity to thrive, the capacity to see that even though things was not easy, even though my parent was not there, even though there were no sister, no brother, but I have to survive. I have to do whatever I can so that I can rebuild my life, so that my family can never be fed, so that I can rebuild my family. So I joined IRG. As you have said, it is our sister organization. I joined IRG when I was in S4. Can imagine I think I was 17 years old. It was very nice because after joining this organization, I have been put in a family. I know maybe you are aware that our organization group its members through families. A family is a small group of parents and the children. By there, we are like 25 to 30. So when you are there in a family, you are able to go on to follow on the rules of the family given by the parents, but also respecting the advice of your siblings in a family. We sometimes call it artificial family, but in ourselves we call it a real family, like in your family, in your homes, in whatever you do. So in our family, that is where we do everything that defines who we are. In our family, we do activities that rebuild the hope, that rebuild our mind, that heals our hearts. So we do activities that are being done in the normal families that people have. You know, for example, when you are in a family, you obey the rules of your father, you obey the rules of the family, you follow what your father, your mother, your elders are showing to you. So that is what we do also in our families. We do have parents who are sometimes on the same age like us, and also we do have siblings which are on the same age like us, but we do activities which are really comforting to one another. And again, we do activities that are out of our families really. So to support other survivors in their communities where they are, but also to think how we can grow up together, how we can rebuild our economic life together, how we can build our mental health together. That is what each and everyone experience in our families. Going back to the time I joined it, it was like I'm dreaming. It was a new step towards my life. I have been in the IRG and GIRG from that time, 2017. I have not missed any single month, any single year without being part of this organization, these beautiful organizations. And for sure, what I can tell you, my experience is very thankful. We used to say during our gatherings, there is some jokes that we used to share, saying that whatever we have to say is like to thank IRG. That is what we use to say, like, thank you, IRG. We should not have been accomplished anything in our life without having this organization, this beautiful organization, without having brothers who are closer to us, without having parents at the university, at the high school, who can care to us, who can guide us, who can give us material support, who can give us advices in our life, and so on. So it is a beautiful organization. Whoever who have been able to join it have experienced so much good things in their lifetime.
Fidel, thank you very much. I just have a quick question. I don't know if it's unique to Rwanda, what GIRG and IRG do in terms of restoring families to people whose families were wiped out completely. Do you know in other countries that have experienced, something similar to a genocide, maybe like massive conflict or deep displacement? Is this sort of model of creating, you call them artificial families, but obviously they grow to be, real families over time. But in your research, in your knowledge, do you know other countries that kind of have the same model of creating families started by youth for young people who have lost their families?
Dana, to be sincere, I have not been able to. I have been doing so many researches in Jewish regarding Holocaust in Cambodia and other genocides around the world, but I have not been able to find similar initiatives. I can call it homegrown initiative. We sometimes discuss like the government can even think that it can be one of its homegrown initiatives, which other countries can even come to cope on. I have not received any document from any other country that are using same initiative.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fidel. And it's just really refreshing and inspiring to see, you here as a survivor, and you are just even more, committed to living your best life. And I think it sends a story to people who may be going through issues to just hear your testimonies and where you are in life right now. Berna, is there something that you'd like to add to what Fidel has shared with us?
No.
Okay. Charles?
No, just to wish him the best of luck. I remember in the late 90s and early 2000s when IRG, the early stages of IRG at the National University in Butare, I used to look at these guys and you sort of want to, the message and the activities around that time were really, let's just be together, let's remain as a cluster and support one another. Now, the point that Fidel raises just makes me think that, it's this small, it's like really a flower or a seed that is planted in the soil and it germinates into a huge tree that then bears fruits. Because he's a young man and I can see the fruits of GIRG are coming from IRG. And you never underestimate initiatives that are driven by committed people.
Yeah. I just have a last question to our panelists, and my question, and also on behalf of the panel right here, is what role do you see youth playing in genocide commemoration activities in the future? We've heard from all of you. We've looked at your initiatives, the work GIRG continues to do. Authors like Hugh Claver, we know there are many others whose works were published last year. Samantha, the amazing work that you're doing online, you know, drowning out very negative messages from people who want to, who just really want to weaken the narrative on the genocide of the Tutsi in Rwanda. What role, if you can just briefly share with us your opinions on what role youth can play in going forward regarding genocide commemoration and also preserving the memory of people who lost their lives during this period. And I'll start with you, Claver.
In my opinion, I think let's start by unpacking who these people are. We are talking about young people in Rwanda. We are now almost 13 million people, and young people represent 70% of this population. We are talking about 9 million now. Most of these people were not there when genocide was happening. Others were very young, between 4 and 5 years old. 26 years later, those who were born after, and even those who were very young then, are becoming parents. So, in my opinion, I think we are confronted with two major tasks. One is educating this young generation to know about what happened in this country and how it happened. How it happened is very important for them to understand that genocide is not an explosion of sudden events. They should understand that before genocide, we lived many years of discrimination and persecutions. And to understand that goes with understanding how genocide was stopped and how the country is recovering from this horrific past. And everyone has got a role to play, young people, but also parents. And I'm thankful to the government because we have the history of genocide being taught in schools, I think from P6, primary 6 upwards. But the key role is really has to happen in our homes. We have to have conversation about this past because the past, we've got to learn many lessons from the past. The past shouldn't define us, but we should learn from it. For young people, responding to your question, for young people, it is their right to ask questions to their parents, for those who still have chance to have their parents. But they also should also go on transmitting this memory to the very young ones, which is what the book I published is attempting to do, but also acknowledging amazing work being done by those who are aware of that past and trying to do amazing work, like Teta, who is with us tonight. And by collectively joining our effort together to educate this young generation, to support the school system and make our homes a very grounded and essential education ground, then I'm hopeful that these 9 million Rwandans will lead the way. And when you look at how they are very encouraged to join government initiatives, to join, to come up front and do participate in the reconstruction of the country, this gives me hope that we have 9 million of people who will sustain what Rwanda is achieving today. So, in brief, young people have their role to play, but we also have to support them. Those who were there, who know history, they have to teach them. And then young people also, they have to take initiatives to bring on board many more others, regardless of our past, sad, painful, or shameful, if we are descendants of perpetrators and so on. But we should face this because it is part of who we are. We cannot escape the history of our country.
Samantha, we are running out of time, so if you can briefly also share with us your thoughts on what role Rwandan youth have to play in the future regarding the preservation of memory.
From what I learned from my team, it's that Kwibuka is not to be left just for relevant authorities. We have to own it. And when we own it, then we understand that we have to stay curious, we have to stay committed, and we have to use what we have. We use social media because that's what we have access to. But even past COVID, whatever you have within the world you change is the one in your immediate vicinity. So whatever you have, use that to the best of your abilities and just learn, keep learning. We're a melting pot of stories, we're a melting pot of experiences. There's so much to learn and so many people to reach out to. And if you just take that one step, then you create a ripple effect. And that's what we're trying to do. Just let's own Kwibuka, let's own our history, and let's just really put effort in remember, renew, and unite. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Much, Sam. Very quickly to Fidel, your closing remarks on the role of youth in preservation, in Kwibuka, preservation of memory.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. For that. First of all, I would like to congratulate my fellow colleagues. I'm a friend to Clever, but it is my first time to meet Samantha, and I really appreciate her initiatives. It is very, very inspiring to us as youth, and even to the many young people who are following her, who are using digital platforms in this concept. To us, and to me personally, I will not talk much more because I'm the executive secretary of GIRG, and as an organization, we do have what we do in this area because our organization has a vision of a world free of genocide. So to achieve or to fight to achieve this vision, we have to set up some activities which are in line in that of that vision. We do have a program of memory and genocide prevention. Under that program, we do some activities which are in line of safeguarding the history of genocide. Like, for example, we do commemoration activities for wiped out families. We have so far identified 15,000 families which have been wiped out across the country, and we are still doing similar activities to really safeguard this history. These activities that we are doing in high schools and the primary schools are in line of educating youth about genocide. And in the future, we are planning to engage filmmakers, artists, so that they can some competition in line of safeguarding history and genocide prevention.
Fidel, I think, unfortunately, we've run out of time, and you seem to be breaking off, but I think we got the gist of the work GIRG plans to do in the future, and it sounds very good. We're here to support it. I know I am, and I know Charles and Benna, in whatever capacity we have, will. So I would like to just thank our viewers. Thank you so, so much. It's fantastic work you're doing. It's inspiring work you're doing. It really puts a lot in perspective, seeing where many of you have come from and where you are today, and you still keep on giving. So thank you very much to Fidel. Thank you very much to Claver. Samantha, keep up the good work. We'll be waiting to see you online, and hopefully this campaign will continue even just after this 1 week official commemoration period. Very quick closing remarks, Berna and Charles, if you have any.
I think we need to be deliberate in terms of mobilizing resources to fund these activities. They cost money. His plan around a world free of genocide, it costs money. And so we need to be aware of that. And that's from January to December, not just in April for 100 days.
Yeah, fantastic. Charles, closing remarks?
Yeah, just words of encouragement to everyone who's behind that. Claver, keep it up. Waiting for more books like that. Please do let us know any way in which we can support you. And Samantha and Fidel, keep up the good work.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's been a very great discussion. Please continue the conversation online. We've seen some tweets coming in, but we don't really have time to go through them. Carry on the conversation using #TheSquareRW. You can also subscribe to the Square Rwanda's YouTube channel just to keep up to date on the content that you see on RBA. We also have it online. And yeah, just thank you very much to our guests. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Brenna. Thank you, Charles. I'd like to also thank our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in, and see you again next week. Have a good night.